The night was cold, and the streets of the city were busy with rushing cars, glowing streetlights, and people walking fast. The young food delivery guy rode his small motorbike, carrying a big thermal bag on his back. Inside the bag was hot food, and the smell was strong enough to make his stomach growl. But he had no time to think about it. He was late, and the app on his phone kept beeping, reminding him that the customer was waiting. His hands were cold on the handlebar, and he leaned forward, pushing through the traffic. He just wanted to finish the delivery, go home, and rest. He turned into a narrow street between tall old buildings. The place was darker, quieter than the main road. The air smelled of damp walls and smoke. His bike's headlight cut through the shadows, and that was when he saw it. Something small, glowing faintly on the wet ground near the edge of the sidewalk. At first, he thought it was just a piece of plastic reflecting the light, maybe a child's toy left behind. But the glow was steady, soft, like it was alive. He slowed down, pulled over, and stepped off his bike. His shoes splashed in a small puddle as he bent down. The object was round, silver with strange lines carved into it, and it pulsed with a quiet blue light. It was no bigger than his palm. He hesitated, looking left and right, but the street was empty. A delivery guy picking up strange junk was not unusual, but this didn't feel like junk. He reached out, picked it up carefully, and the moment his fingers touched it, a sharp jolt of energy shot through his hand. He gasped, almost dropping it, but instead held it tighter. For a second, he felt dizzy, like the world around him had gone silent. Then, faintly, he heard something. Not outside, but inside his head. A whisper, soft and quick, in a language he could not understand. The sound faded before he could react, leaving him staring at the object in confusion. His heart pounded, and he laughed nervously to himself. "Just tired," he muttered, trying to convince himself it was nothing. Still, he put the glowing object in his jacket pocket and got back on his bike. The phone beeped again, reminding him of the delivery. He drove off quickly, pretending everything was normal. But as he rode, he felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest where the object rested against him. The bag of food bounced behind him, but he no longer cared about the delivery. His thoughts kept circling back to the strange toy. When he reached the customer's apartment, he tried to act normal. He knocked on the door, handed over the food with a forced smile, and left quickly before anyone could notice his trembling hands. Outside, under the dull streetlight, he pulled out the object again. It was still glowing, but now softer, like it was breathing. He turned it over in his hand, tracing the strange lines. They looked almost like writing, but not any writing he knew. For a moment, he thought about throwing it into the trash. It felt dangerous, wrong, like something he should not be holding. But when he raised his hand to toss it away, the glow suddenly grew brighter, and a low hum filled the air. Startled, he lowered his hand, and the glow faded back to normal. His heart raced. It was as if the object didn't want to be thrown away. He shoved it back into his pocket, shaking his head, and decided not to think about it for now. Back on his bike, he rode through the city again, finishing his other deliveries. The glowing object pressed against his chest with every movement, and each time he felt a faint throb, almost like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. No one else could see it hidden under his jacket, but he felt like it was watching him, waiting. By the time his shift ended, the city was quiet, and the streets were mostly empty. He parked his bike near his small rented room. Inside, the place was dark. A single bed pushed against the wall, a desk with an old lamp, and a cracked window letting in the yellow light from outside. He sat down, pulled the object from his pocket, and placed it on the table. The glow filled the room with soft blue light, dancing across the peeling paint of the walls. He sat staring at it for a long time. Every so often, the faint whisper returned, too soft to understand, but strong enough to make his skin prickle. He leaned closer, as if listening to the object itself. His hands shook slightly, but he couldn't look away. The delivery app on his phone buzzed with new orders, but he ignored it. For the first time since he started the job, he didn't care about food, customers, or money. The toy, or whatever it was, had stolen his full attention. Something about it felt important, far bigger than his small life of deliveries and late-night rides. It didn't belong on a wet street corner. It belonged to something greater, something he couldn't name yet. As his eyelids grew heavy from exhaustion, he whispered to himself, "What are you?" The glowing object pulsed once, brighter than before, almost as if it had answered. The small room was silent, except for the ticking of an old wall clock and the faint humming sound that came from the glowing object on the desk. The young delivery guy lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, but his eyes kept drifting to the strange round toy. He had tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he felt the glow pressing into his mind, pulling his attention back. Finally, he sat up, rubbed his face, and looked at it again. The object had not stopped glowing since he picked it up. It gave off a calm blue light, soft but strong enough to make shadows dance on the walls. At first, he thought maybe it was some electronic gadget, maybe even a kid's lost toy, but it was unlike anything he had ever seen. It had no switches, no battery slot, no wires, just smooth metal with strange lines carved into it. He reached out slowly and touched it. The moment his finger brushed its surface, the object moved. It rose from the table without his help. His hand snapped back in shock as the object floated a few inches above the desk, glowing brighter. His heart pounded, and he whispered, "No way." The hum grew louder, filling the room with a strange vibration that rattled the lamp. He stumbled backward, hitting the wall, his eyes wide with fear. The glow spread out like water, forming shapes in the air. A beam of light burst upward, and in front of him appeared a small, flickering figure. It was the image of a child, but not a human child. Its skin was pale green, its eyes large and shining like glass, and its face carried an expression of deep sadness. The delivery guy froze, gripping the edge of his bed so tightly his knuckles turned white. The figure was crying. Tiny glowing tears rolled down its cheeks as it reached its small hands forward, as if begging for help. He shook his head, trying to convince himself it was just a dream, a trick of his tired mind. But the sound that followed was real. A soft voice filled the room, not from outside, but directly inside his head. The words were broken, like static, but the meaning was clear enough. "Help, please." He gasped, his chest tightening. The figure seemed to notice his shock and grew clearer, more solid, as if feeding on his attention. He could see the child's clothing, ragged and torn, with glowing symbols on its sleeves. Its lips moved again, and though he could not understand the language, his heart understood the emotion. It was lost. It was desperate. It needed him. He pressed his palms against his face and whispered, "This is impossible." He had seen movies about aliens, but nothing in his life had prepared him for this. He was just a food delivery guy, struggling to pay rent. Why was something like this in his room? Why did it come to him? The toy floated closer, still projecting the image of the child. The boy raised his head, tears shimmering, and said something again. This time the words were sharper, clearer, and though the language was strange, one word broke through all barriers: protector. The delivery guy stumbled to his feet, shaking his head violently. "No, no, you've got the wrong person," he muttered. His voice cracked, fear mixing with disbelief. He wanted to run, but where would he go? The glowing object was tied to him now, following his every move. The figure stretched out its arms again, and suddenly, a wave of images flashed through his mind. He saw burning skies, ships made of black metal, and shadows hunting the small alien child across endless worlds. He saw cages, chains, and weapons far beyond human understanding. And in every vision, the child was running, terrified, until the glowing toy fell through a rip in space and landed on Earth, on his street in front of him. The images stopped as quickly as they came, leaving him panting, sweat dripping down his forehead. His legs trembled. He looked at the toy again, now resting back on the desk, but still glowing, still humming like it was alive. He realized this was not a simple object. It was a beacon, a message, maybe even a living piece of technology from somewhere far beyond Earth. For a long time, he stood in silence, staring at it, unable to decide what to do. Part of him wanted to throw it out the window and pretend none of this ever happened. But another part, deeper and quieter, felt a pull. The child's voice still echoed in his head. "Help, protector." His stomach growled suddenly, reminding him of the leftover food in his bag. He laughed nervously, shaking his head. "Great. An alien needs my help, and I'm still hungry." He forced himself to eat quickly, but even as he chewed, his eyes never left the glowing toy. It pulsed in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, as if it was alive, as if it was watching him. Later, When he finally lay back down, he thought he could rest. But just as his eyes closed, the glow brightened again. This time, it whispered longer, clearer. He still couldn't understand the words, but the tone was gentle, pleading, like a child asking for safety. His heart ached against his will. He pulled the blanket up to his chin, closed his eyes tighter, and tried to block it out. But even in his dreams, the glowing blue light and the crying alien child followed him. When the clock struck midnight, he woke again, startled by a soft sound. The toy was hovering right above his chest, glowing stronger than before. He froze, afraid to move. Then, in a calm voice, it spoke one more word that needed no translation. Friend. He swallowed hard, staring at it in silence, his breath uneven. He didn't know if he was losing his mind or if this was the beginning of something far bigger than his life had ever been. The only thing he knew was that nothing about his world would ever be normal again. The next morning came with gray skies and the sound of traffic outside his window. The delivery guy sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the strange glowing object resting quietly on the table. It looked harmless now, like just a toy, but he knew better. He remembered the floating image of the alien child, the cries for help, and that one word that had echoed in his mind, protector. He rubbed his face with both hands, trying to tell himself it was only a dream, but the steady glow proved it was real. He grabbed the object, stuffed it deep in his jacket pocket, and went out for his usual food deliveries. The streets were busy, filled with honking cars, rushing people, and neon lights. Everything looked the same, but he didn't feel the same anymore. He felt watched. He felt different. The toy inside his pocket pulsed faintly, and each time it did, a strange warmth spread through his chest, like a second heartbeat that wasn't his own. During his first delivery of the day, he stopped at a tall apartment block. As he waited for the elevator, the toy began to vibrate against his chest. He froze and looked around, but no one else seemed to notice. The vibration grew stronger, and then suddenly a voice whispered inside his head again. It was not the child this time. It was deeper, heavier, and hard to understand. He caught only a single word, chosen. His knees felt weak. He stumbled out of the elevator and dropped the food at the door of the customer, barely saying a word. His mind raced. Why him? Why was he chosen? He was just an ordinary human, not strong, not special. He lived alone, delivered food to survive, and never thought his life would matter beyond the next delivery. He left the building and got back on his bike. The sky was darker now, clouds rolling in. As he rode through the streets, something unusual caught his eye. Black vans, windows tinted, were moving slowly along the road. Men in dark suits stood near the corners, holding strange devices that blinked with red light. At first, he thought they were some kind of police, but the equipment they carried looked nothing like human technology. They scanned walls, doors, and even the ground. He pulled his bike to the side and pretended to check his phone. His eyes followed the men carefully. They weren't looking for a person. They were looking for something. A cold thought entered his mind. They're searching for the toy. His fingers pressed against the object in his pocket, and for a second, the glow inside pulsed harder, almost like it was answering his thought. One of the men suddenly stopped and turned in his direction. The red scanner in his hand blinked rapidly. The delivery guy panicked. Without thinking, he revved his bike and sped away. Behind him, he heard the sound of shouting voices and the roar of the black van's engine starting. His heart thumped wildly as he raced through traffic, weaving between cars, ignoring horns and angry drivers. The toy vibrated harder now, glowing through his jacket. He felt it warning him, pushing him to go faster. He turned down a side street, then another, trying to lose the van, but every time he glanced back, he saw the black vehicle chasing him, its lights off, silent and dangerous. Finally, he slid into a narrow alley and killed the engine. He pressed his back to the wall, gasping for air, holding the toy tight against his chest. The van rushed past the alley without stopping. He closed his eyes and tried to calm his breathing. But before he could relax, the toy spoke again in that strange alien voice, the words clearer this time. Protector, danger, hunters. He almost dropped it. Hunters, he whispered, staring at the glowing lines. The toy pulsed once as if confirming his fear. His legs shook as he realized the truth. The child's visions had been real. There were hunters after this thing, and now they were after him. He wanted to throw it away right there in the alley, leave it behind, and run. But when he lifted his hand to toss it, the toy let out a sharp flash of light. His body froze. A feeling rushed into his mind, an image of the alien child looking at him with wide, begging eyes. It was not just a memory, it was the toy forcing him to see, forcing him to remember. His hand lowered slowly, unwillingly. His chest ached with guilt, as if he would be betraying the child if he let go. He groaned and shoved it back into his pocket, muttering, "Why me? Why not someone stronger, smarter?" The toy gave no answer, only hummed softly, almost like a heartbeat again. When he finally got home, his legs felt like stone. He locked the door and sat on the floor, staring at the object glowing in the dark room. He was terrified, confused, and angry all at once. But deep inside, he knew the truth. It had chosen him. No matter how much he tried to deny it, he was tied to it now. Later that night, as he lay in bed, the voice came again. The child's image flickered faintly, whispering words he could barely understand. He only caught fragments. Protect, safe, find me. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but his heart pounded with fear and a strange new sense of responsibility. He pulled the blanket over his head, clutching the toy close, and whispered to himself, "I don't want this, but maybe I don't have a choice." The toy pulsed once more, steady and warm, as if agreeing. Outside, unseen in the shadows, the hunters' black vans rolled silently through the streets, scanning, searching, always getting closer. The night air was heavy with the smell of smoke and wet streets as the delivery guy pushed his bike through the narrow lanes. His mind kept racing back to the strange men in black suits, the red scanning devices, and the way they had followed him. Every sound made him jump. The slam of a car door, the echo of footsteps, even the soft rustle of wind through trash. He knew they were searching for the toy. The glowing object in his pocket pulsed like a warning, telling him danger was close. He tried to act normal, riding toward his next delivery, but his hands shook on the handlebar. He stopped at a fast food place, picked up a bag of food, and drove off again, forcing himself to breathe slowly. But the feeling of eyes watching him never left. At one intersection, he caught sight of another black van parked near the curb. Its windows were dark, hiding whoever sat inside, but the scanner on the roof blinked with red light. His chest tightened. He knew if he stopped too long, they would find him. He turned suddenly, cutting through a busy market street filled with people and stalls. The smell of roasted meat and fried noodles mixed with the loud calls of vendors. For a moment, he felt safer in the crowd. But then he noticed them. Two men in black suits, tall, moving fast, their eyes locked on him. He pushed his bike faster, weaving between stalls and pedestrians, and hummed, ignoring the angry shouts as he brushed past them. The toy in his pocket grew hotter, its glow bleeding through his jacket. Suddenly, a flash of light blinked before his eyes, almost like a vision. In his mind, he saw a map of the streets, a quick image of where he should turn. His heart pounded. Was the toy showing him the way? Without thinking, he followed the vision and swerved into a narrow alley behind the market. The alley was dark, with broken bricks and garbage scattered on the ground. His tires screeched as he sped through, barely making the turn. Behind him, he heard footsteps and the sound of something metallic hitting the ground. One of the men had thrown a small device, and when it hit, it let out a loud hum. The walls of the alley glowed faintly as if they were being scanned. The delivery guy panicked and pressed harder on the throttle. His bike shot forward, escaping the hum just as it turned into a loud pulse that shook the air. He came out on another street, but his relief was short-lived. The black van was already there, turning its headlights on him. The road was empty except for him and the van. He froze for a split second, staring into the blinding light. The engine of the van roared, and it sped toward him. His instincts screamed. He twisted the handle and shot forward, the bike racing at full speed. The van followed, closing in. The toy vibrated harder, almost painful now. His ears rang with a voice in his head, broken but urgent. Run. Danger. The words made his heart slam against his ribs. He leaned low on the bike, racing down the road, turning sharply into another side street. The van skidded behind him, tires screeching, but it didn't stop. As he approached another crossing, he saw two more men waiting, each holding strange weapons that glowed faint blue. They raised them toward him. He panicked, but before he could turn, the toy pulsed with a blinding flash. The men staggered back, covering their eyes. He raced past them, barely escaping the trap. His mind reeled. This was not just technology. The toy was protecting him. He rode for what felt like forever until his bike finally ran out of fuel near the edge of the city. He pushed it into a shadowy lane and crouched behind a wall, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. The streets were quiet here, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they caught up. He pulled the toy out and stared at it, its glow steady now, softer, calmer. His hands trembled as he whispered, "Why are they after you? What do you want from me?" The toy didn't answer with words, but his mind filled again with images. He saw dark ships landing on alien ground, cages filled with strange creatures, and hunters with the same black suits moving through them. Then he saw the alien child again, eyes wide with fear, holding out its hand. His chest ached. This wasn't just a random object, it was carrying a message, maybe even a life. He clenched his jaw, fear mixing with anger. "I'm just a delivery guy," he muttered, "not a hero." But deep down, he knew it didn't matter what he thought. The toy had chosen him, and the hunters knew it. A noise snapped him back. The sound of boots on the pavement echoed closer. Shadows stretched along the walls as figures moved in. He pressed his back harder against the brick, holding the toy tight. It pulsed once, then again, as if ready. His breath came fast, his body tense, and for the first time, he realized there was no going back. The hunters were closing in, scanning, searching, their strange devices lighting up the dark street. He could hear one of them speaking in a language he couldn't understand, the voice sharp and commanding. He tried not to move, but the toy's glow betrayed him, shining faintly through the crack of his jacket. One of the hunters shouted, pointing in his direction. His body reacted before his mind could. He sprinted, clutching the toy to his chest, his footsteps loud against the wet ground. Behind him came the sound of shouts and the heavy thuds of boots chasing him. He turned into another alley, then another, but they were fast, too fast. Just when he thought he was caught, the toy let out another pulse, stronger this time, throwing a wave of energy that knocked the hunters back. Windows rattled, lights flickered, and car alarms went off nearby. He stumbled but kept running, his heart exploding in his chest. When he finally reached the roof of a half-broken building, he collapsed behind a wall, gasping for breath. His whole body shook, and the toy glowed quietly in his hands. The hunters were still out there, more dangerous than ever. But for now, he was safe. He stared at the toy with wide eyes, whispering, "You're gonna get me killed." But deep inside, he already knew the truth. His life had changed forever, and there was no escape from what was coming. The night was deep and silent when he finally reached his small room again. He shut the door quickly, locked it, and leaned against it with his chest heaving. Sweat dripped down his forehead, and his clothes clung to his body. The toy in his hand was glowing faintly, steady and calm, as if it had not just blasted a wave of energy to save him. He dropped onto the floor, back against the wall, staring at the object like it was some kind of living thing. His voice shook as he whispered, "What are you?" The toy hummed softly, and the lines carved on its surface shifted like they were alive, glowing brighter and dimmer in rhythm. He couldn't explain it, but he felt the hum inside his bones. He pushed himself up slowly and placed it on the table, stepping back as though it might explode. He wanted to leave it there, ignore it, pretend he had nothing to do with it. But his eyes refused to look away. It pulled him in, like gravity. Hours passed, and outside, the sounds of the city faded until all that was left was the faint ticking of his clock. He sat on his bed, still watching the toy, afraid to even blink. Then, without warning, the glow surged. The toy floated again, humming louder, and then beams of light shot out, striking the walls, ceiling, and floor. His room filled with blue patterns, like star maps stretching across every surface. He gasped, stepping closer. Stars, planets, and strange symbols circled him, as if the toy had opened a door to the universe itself. In the center of the light, an image appeared, this time not only of the alien child, but of dark figures chasing it. The hunters, the same ones he had seen in the city, appeared in the vision. They carried the same weapons, moved with the same cold silence. He watched them surround the child, chains in their hands, shadows stretching long and sharp. Then, just as the child screamed, the toy flashed and the vision cut off. The light vanished, leaving the room dark again. His hands trembled. He dropped onto the bed, clutching his head. He understood now. The toy was not just a message. It was a shield, a weapon, maybe even a piece of the child itself. And the hunters wanted it back. His chest felt heavy with fear, but mixed with it was something else. The child's terrified face wouldn't leave his mind. He had no choice but to accept the truth. He was caught in something far beyond his control. He tried to sleep, but every sound outside made him flinch. Around midnight, he heard footsteps near his building, slow and careful. His heart leapt into his throat. He crept to the window and peeked out. At the end of the street, under a broken street lamp, stood two figures in black. They weren't moving, just watching. He stepped back quickly, covering his mouth to stop his breathing from being heard. Then, without warning, the toy shot into the air again, hovering just above his chest. It glowed so bright it lit up the whole room. He panicked, whispering harshly, "Stop! They'll see you!" But it didn't stop. It floated higher, and then, with a sharp pulse, it surrounded him in a shimmering blue shield. The air buzzed around him, and when he reached out, his fingers pressed against a surface that wasn't there before. His entire body was inside a bubble of light. A loud crash shook the door. The hunters had found him. He stumbled backward as the lock rattled, then snapped. The door flew open, and three men in black stormed in, weapons glowing faintly. He raised his arms instinctively, bracing for impact. One of the men fired, and a blue blast shot straight at him. The shield flared, absorbing the hit with a sound like cracking glass. His eyes widened as he realized he was still alive. The toy pulsed harder, and the shield expanded. Another blast came, then another, but all were swallowed by the shimmering light. For the first time, he felt the toy's power, not just as something strange, but as protection. He wasn't helpless anymore, his fear mixed with a wild rush of adrenaline. The men cursed in a language he didn't understand, then tried to rush him. But the toy flared again, and a wave of force pushed them back, slamming them against the walls. The whole room shook, plaster falling from the ceiling. He stood in the center, trembling, but the toy floated steady, calm, protecting him. One of the men crawled up and pointed a weapon again, but this time the toy reacted faster. A beam of light shot out directly, striking the weapon and melting it into useless metal. The man dropped it with a scream, clutching his burned hands. The others hesitated, then backed toward the door. Their leader shouted something sharp, and in seconds they retreated, disappearing into the night as quickly as they had come. The shield flickered and faded, leaving him standing alone in the destroyed room. His chest heaved, his legs weak, but he was alive. The toy dropped gently into his hands, glowing faintly, almost like it was resting after protecting him. He stared at it in silence, his mind spinning. Finally, he whispered, "You saved me." The words felt strange in his mouth, but true. He looked at the toy again, this time not only with fear, but with something close to trust. He understood now that it wasn't just choosing him, it was bonding with him, giving him a chance to survive. He sat down heavily on the bed, the ruined room around him forgotten. The toy pulsed once more, softly, almost like a heartbeat against his palm. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. The hunters would never stop. They would come again and again, and each time the battles would grow harder. His old life as a simple delivery guy was gone. He was no longer just running food across the city. He was carrying something far greater, and it was already changing him. The room was still in ruins from the attack. Pieces of broken wood and glass lay scattered across the floor. The door hung loosely on its hinges, and the walls carried dark marks where energy blasts had struck. He sat in the middle of it all, clutching the glowing toy tightly against his chest. His heart still beat fast from the fight, and every sound outside made him jump, but the toy pulsed softly in his hands, steady, almost calming. It was as if it was telling him he was safe, at least for now. He closed his eyes, and the toy suddenly grew warm. Light spread through his palms, and in the air above him, the small figure of the alien child appeared again. The hologram flickered weakly, the child's face pale, eyes wide with fear. Its lips moved, and though the words were strange, a few slipped through, broken but clear. "Protector, find me, safe, hurry." He froze, staring at the vision. "Find you? Where?" he whispered. But the child's voice was drowned out by static. Then the toy sent a rush of images into his mind. He saw a planet under a red sky, mountains shaped like jagged teeth, and ships circling above. Then another flash, cages filled with creatures he had never seen before, guarded by tall hunters in black. He gasped and staggered back, pressing a hand to his head as the vision stopped. The meaning was clear. The child was trapped, hunted, and the toy was not just a tool. It was a beacon calling for help. His stomach knotted as he sat on the bed. He was no soldier, no fighter, just a food delivery guy. But the child had chosen him. The word protector echoed in his mind again and again, heavier each time. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to throw the toy away, hide, and pretend none of this had ever happened. But when he looked at the glowing object, it felt alive, almost like it was looking back at him. He remembered the child's tearful eyes, the way it had reached out its small hands. His chest tightened. He couldn't betray it. The next day, he tried to live normally again. He went out on his bike, picked up food orders, and delivered them through the busy city. But everywhere he went, he felt the hunters close. Black vans lurked near corners. Men in suits scanned crowds with their strange devices, and their eyes followed him whenever he passed. He kept one hand pressed to his pocket, feeling the toy's soft glow against him. It was the only reason he hadn't been caught yet. That evening, while he was delivering food to a tall glass tower, the toy pulsed harder than ever. The elevator shook with a faint hum, and he suddenly saw another vision. This time, it was not of the child, but of the hunters. They were closing in on the building he was in. His stomach dropped. He dropped the food bag on the floor and ran. The stairwell echoed with his hurried steps, the toy glowing brighter with every floor he passed. He pushed the door to the rooftop open just as he heard the crash of doors below. The hunters had entered the building. He stumbled across the rooftop, looking desperately for a way out, but the only path was down into the dark streets. A sudden beam of blue light shot past him, burning into the concrete wall. He ducked, his heart exploding in his chest. 3 hunters had followed him onto the roof, their glowing weapons raised. He turned to run, but there was no place left to go. His feet skidded to the edge, nothing but a 10-story drop below. The hunters spread out, cutting off every escape. He pulled the toy from his pocket and held it in front of him like a shield. His voice shook. "If you're going to save me, do it now." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the toy flashed so bright that the hunters staggered back, shielding their eyes. A dome of blue light spread around him, just like before, humming with power. The hunters fired again and again, but the blasts bent and dissolved against the shield. This time, the toy didn't stop there. It lifted itself from his hands and spun in the air, lines glowing faster. Beams of light shot outward, striking the hunters' weapons and melting them instantly. The men cried out, backing away in fear. But instead of chasing them, the toy floated back into his hands, humming softly as if telling him the fight was over. His knees weakened, and he sank to the ground. The hunters fled, vanishing into the shadows, but he barely noticed. He sat there on the rooftop, clutching the toy tightly, breathing like he had run for miles. The power had saved him again, but it left a heavy weight on his shoulders. That night, back in his room, he couldn't sit still. He kept pacing, holding the toy, staring at its glow. The child's voice returned in faint whispers, broken words but always the same meaning. Protector. Hurry. Save. He pressed his hands over his face, torn between fear and guilt. "I can't do this," he muttered. "I'm not a fighter. I'm not a hero." But the toy pulsed again, sending another wave of warmth through his chest, and for the first time he felt something new. Courage. It wasn't his own, not fully. It felt like the toy was sharing its strength with him, pushing him to stand, to accept. He lowered his hands slowly, looking at it with trembling eyes. Maybe he had been chosen not because he was strong, but because he was ordinary. Someone who knew how to care, someone who wouldn't abandon a child begging for help. The thought burned inside him, louder than the fear. He realized he did have a choice, but only one that mattered, to protect the child, no matter what it cost him. He held the toy close to his chest as if it were part of him now. His voice was soft but firm. "I'll find you. I'll protect you." The toy pulsed once more, brighter than ever, as if it had been waiting for those words. In that moment, he understood. His life of simple deliveries was gone forever, and a new path had already begun. The city was quiet, but he knew it was only the calm before the storm. The delivery guy stood near the cracked window of his small room, staring at the dark streets below. His hands gripped the toy tightly. It glowed against his palm, steady like a heartbeat. He could feel it whispering to him without words, preparing him. The hunters would come again, and this time they would not stop until either he or they were finished. He paced the floor, nerves eating at him, but something inside felt different now. He was no longer just running. He was ready to fight. His mind replayed every vision the toy had shown him. The child crying, the chains, the cages, the hunters dragging innocent lives away. He clenched his fists. If he didn't stand now, the child might never be saved, and Earth itself might become their next target. The toy pulsed, and suddenly the walls of the room filled with light again. Stars, strange maps, and glowing patterns stretched across the space. This time, the message was clearer. The child's image appeared once more, smaller than ever, weaker, but still alive. It reached its hand toward him, lips moving. The words came through, broken but strong. Protector. They come. The image flickered and faded, leaving only the glow of the toy. His body tensed. The final battle was near. It started with the sound of engines outside. Black vans rolled silently into the street, stopping at both ends. The ground vibrated as doors slammed shut. He peeked through the window and saw them. Dozens of hunters in their black suits, carrying glowing weapons, their eyes fixed on his building. His chest tightened, but he didn't run. Not this time. He held the toy close, whispering, "If I'm really chosen, then let's finish this." The first crash came at his door. Wood splintered, hinges snapped, and the hunters poured in. Blue blasts filled the air, striking the walls, breaking furniture into pieces. But before the fire touched him, the toy lit up in his hands, surrounding him in a dome of light once more. Energy slammed into the shield and dissolved, leaving him untouched. The hunter shouted, fanning out, circling him, but the toy responded with a power he had never felt before. Beams of blue shot outward, striking weapons, melting them instantly. Sparks filled the room as metal shattered and clattered to the floor. The hunters tried to close in, but the shield expanded, forcing them back. He moved forward step by step, the toy floating in front of him, glowing so bright the entire room looked like a star. His fear was gone, replaced by a strange calm. It felt as if the toy's courage had become his own. One hunter leapt forward with a blade glowing red, aiming for his chest. For a second, he froze, but the toy spun sharply and released a wave of force that threw the man across the room. He slammed against the wall and lay still. The others hesitated, stepping back. For the first time, he saw fear in their eyes. He shouted, his voice shaking the air, "Leave me alone! You won't take it!" It was the first time he had ever raised his voice against them, and it felt powerful. The toy pulsed, almost as if agreeing with him. The hunters regrouped, their leader stepping forward, taller, colder, eyes glowing faintly. He raised a massive weapon, larger than the rest, and fired directly at him. The blast was stronger than anything before, slamming into the shield with a thunderous crack. The room shook, glass shattered, dust rained from the ceiling. His knees buckled as he struggled to hold on. The toy pulsed harder, pouring its strength into him. His vision blurred, his body ached, but he refused to let go. He pressed forward, step by step, until finally the shield burst outward with a massive wave of energy. The hunters were thrown across the room like rag dolls, crashing into walls, falling through broken furniture. Silence followed, broken only by his heavy breathing. When the dust settled, the hunters were gone. Some crawled out of the building, others lay unconscious, but none dared to return. The leader dropped his weapon, glaring at him with hate before retreating into the shadows. And then the street outside grew quiet once more. He collapsed to his knees, Freakend clutching the toy to his chest. His entire body shook, his breath ragged, but his heart was steady. He had survived. The toy's glow softened, gentle now, almost like a thank you. He felt warmth spread through him, a strange peace washing away the fear. As the night stretched on, he sat in the ruined room, staring at the toy. For the first time, he didn't see it as a burden. He saw it as a bond, a promise. He whispered, voice steady this time, "I'll find you. I'll protect you, no matter where you are." The toy pulsed once more, brighter than ever, as if it understood. Outside, the city continued its life, unaware of the battle that had just taken place. People ordered food, cars honked, lights flickered in tall buildings. To them, it was just another night. But for him, everything had changed. He was no longer just a delivery guy with late orders and long nights. He was the protector of something greater, something that could change the fate of worlds. He leaned back against the wall, exhaustion finally pulling at him. The toy rested in his hands, glowing faintly, like a star waiting to guide him. His old life was gone, but he didn't mourn it. Instead, a quiet determination filled him. The road ahead was dangerous, filled with hunters and shadows, but he wasn't afraid anymore. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "My life changed the night I picked you up." The toy pulsed gently in response, and in that silent room, under the faint glow of alien light, a new chapter of his life had already begun.